Ole Miss gets its biggest transfer portal win of the season.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss Podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hello, I'm your host, Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former Ole Miss staff member. Today's Locked On Ole Miss Podcast is all about the huge commitment Ole Miss just landed from Caleb Odom. Caleb Odom transferred from the Alabama Crimson Tide, and this is arguably the biggest recruiting win for Ole Miss since Walter Nolan a year ago. We'll break down the type of player that Odom is and how this addition makes the Ole Miss offense even more dynamic and less predictable heading into 2025. Stay tuned for all the details and what it means for the Rebels going forward. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make this show what it is. Don't forget to find a second listen on the network. Chris Gordy at Locked On SEC or Corey Burton at Locked On Vandy offer great perspectives on college football, the SEC, and yes, even Ole Miss. Hey, and Diego Pavia got an extra year of eligibility. Check out Corey Burton for that as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Ole Miss landed a major commitment, I think it was Thursday evening, from Caleb Odom from Carrollton, Georgia, a transfer from Alabama. And looking at Caleb Odom, he is a jumbo wide receiver. And I don't mean that as any type of a slight or anything like that. Think Evan Ingram. He's not going to line up and be an inline tight end in this offense. They're going to split him out, but Ole Miss splits out the tight ends anyway. So he's going to be a wide receiver. So at 6'5", 220 pounds, and some say up to 230 pounds, he is a really large wide receiver with excellent hands. He played in all 12 games this season with the Alabama Crimson Tide and was a really good player for them and absolutely in their plans. Now, coming out of high school, this is what his rankings looked like. He was a 5-star on 3. He was a 4-star on ESPN, 247, and Rivals. And if you look at the transfer stars, it's not rated the same way in what's going on there. Caleb Odom is a major, major piece in this Ole Miss offense moving forward. He's coming in as a true sophomore with 3 years to play for. Caleb Odom is the type of receiver that Lane Kiffin recruited the heck out of going into the 2024 recruiting cycle and what's going on when he ultimately signed with Alabama because of what he will do in this offense. There is so many things that he can do with a player like Caleb Odom, with wide receiver, outside wide receiver skills, inside wide receiver blocking ability, and a little bit of tight end thrown in as well. It allows you to do so much in this offense. Let me explain. 13 personnel is now a legitimate possibility for the Lane Kiffin and the normal offense being run. This is what the Georgia Bulldogs did during their national championship runs with Brock Bowers and how they were able to use him. Brock Bowers is an alien. I'm not saying he's not, but the reason the offense was able to be so effective was because of the versatility and the mismatch problems that he posed. If you lined him on the outside on a cornerback, he simply outweighed him by 50 pounds and had him by 5 inches. If you put him on the inside, his athleticism and quickness, he was able to get free from any linebacker they had. There was nobody that could really be matched up on him. You had to double team him every single time. Caleb Odom provides a little bit of that as well. You can legitimately see a system with this offense in the fall to where Caleb Odom is on the outside. Ole Miss has 2 tight ends in the game in Luke Haas and Dequan Wright. And then you have Deshaun Stribling on the other side. These are all wide receivers or tight ends that are plus 210 pounds, all of which probably are going to be fairly good blockers. So you have a Service Academy blocking lineup on the field going up against players that they're bigger than. This is why Justice Haynes is becoming so important. With somebody like Haynes and Shakai Mills-Knight and Logan Diggs if he's healthy, and that lined up at running back, Kyron Lacey, or Lacey, sorry, at running back as well. Whenever you have that with those outside things, the running game's going to get better. Everybody blamed the running game on the offensive line a year ago. And some of that was probably a little bit true. A lot of it, though, was schematic of what they did. Every time there was a hurry up 4th and 1, they ran up and Jordan Watkins was asked to block an SEC defensive end, and it just didn't work. That wasn't a situation where the offensive line got beat. That was a situation where you're asking somebody to do something that they can't do. In this same exact situation, you could run tempo, switching in and out of goal line type offense, tight, wide sets, even 5 wides with those tight ends. And the defense is not going to be able to sub to deal with the tempo that Ole Miss has. And you have the athletes on the field that can make you hurt and win matchups. That is why this Caleb Odom's commitment is so important for Ole Miss. Him allowing them to do that. You're going to line up and have a Caleb Cunningham and a Caleb Odom wide receiver unit at times. Again, that's over 200 pounds on both sides. You have to be able to block, and if you can do that, you're going to have a much better outside run game than you had this season. It's going to look more akin to what Ole Miss did in 2022 when they had the blockers downfield. They had the mindset of getting it done. These are some big guys that are going to be able to handle a lot of stuff. And if you can handle the outside blocking with the running backs, like, say, a Justice Haynes, if he decides to commit, Logan Diggs, now the question mark is how healthy is. Ole Miss probably needs to play him some in the Gator Bowl. Shakai Mills-Knight, who I think has a chance to be next year's Quinshon Judkins. And Caleb Odom, he's an underclassman. 3 years to play. I wouldn't count him for more than 2, but 3 years to play. When you look at all of the wide receivers on the field with a quarterback like Austin Simmons designed to get him the ball. Listen, Austin Simmons doesn't have the most large numbers. He was 18 to 31, 248 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. But if you want to look at how rare it is for a true freshman coming up in mop-up duty to even have numbers this good, I want to ask everybody to go look at what Eli Manning did as a redshirt freshman whenever he was backing up Romero in 2000. Look at that as something that you can judge off of. Simmons was very good, and his rapport with Daquan Wright and Caden Lee cannot be overstated as well. I'm not overlooking those guys. Caden Lee did not drop a single ball this year. He was money. He's going to be a safety net for Austin Simmons, largely in the same way that Jordan Watkins was for Jackson Dart. The point is, this offense is going to get much more varied in what they can do. More toys in the toy box, personnel-wise, by running essentially 13 personnel. I'm not even talking about 12 personnel because that's easy. That's simply just putting Odom in for a Caden Lee situation, and you're running 12 personnel. You're running the full offense. You're running a situation to where you can put both tight ends in tight and block for the run game. It gives you more variability and less predictability in your offense. And the speed of this offense, I talk to people all the time. The speed of this offense means it has to be simple. And when it's simple, it can be predictable. Everybody knows that inside zone's coming. It's just a matter if you can stop it. If you move quick enough to get your feet in the dirt, planted. If you don't bust and hit the gaps that you're supposed to hit, this offense can be a fairly simple offense to contain. This will allow more variability and less predictability on an offensive team that honestly needs it, can use it. And you have a quarterback in Austin Simmons that can handle everything that's going on. You've got athletes all over the field, and Ole Miss is recruiting a ton of offensive linemen right now. They're up to 3 at the moment of offensive linemen they've recruited in the transfer portal class. This number 1, number 2 in the nation, depending on what time of day it is, transfer portal class. And there's a lot more to come. Just looking at the number of players that Ole Miss had to get going into the season, there's probably 15 to 20 more transfers that could happen between now and June. That should be pretty interesting for everybody to look at. Anyway, Ole Miss also landed a key commitment from UAB's Delano Townsend, a standout interior lineman who gave up just 1 sack and 464 pass block snaps in 2024. Plus, this weekend is shaping up to be a defensive-heavy weekend with linebacker prospects that are in town. Could this be the start of a dominant defense rebuild? Stay tuned. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot or that you were paying for twice? That's definitely happened to me. I've had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower those bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wouldn't use anymore, and I've already saved a ton. With their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set money aside for the future. No more stressing about budgeting every single month. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions with Rocket Money and reach your financial goals faster. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. You know, there's nothing like the energy of being at a live game, the roar of the crowd, the sound of the sneakers squeaking on the court, and even spotting a few celebrities in the crowd. I remember going to an NBA game a few years back, and the electricity in the arena was unforgettable. You can't replicate that watching on your couch. This year, I'm looking forward to catching more games live, and Game Time makes it easier than ever with their new Game Time's Picks features. Whether it's basketball, concerts, or theater, Game Time helps you find the best deals on the great seats without the hassles of endless scrolling. I just hopped on the app to check out tickets of an upcoming game, and Game Time Picks made it a breeze to find that super deal on amazing seats. Plus, the app showed me panoramic seat views so I could pick the perfect spot. No guesswork, no surprises. And it's not just sports. Game Time also has incredible deals for concerts and comedy shows. I'm planning on grabbing tickets to a concert next month, and with all-in prices, I see exactly what I'll pay up front. No hidden fees at checkout. And what I love most about Game Time is their lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. And with the event cancellation protection, your tickets are covered if plans change. It's the most flexible ticketing app I've ever used. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, so he wasn't the only commitment in Caleb Odom that Ole Miss got. Ole Miss also grabbed a commitment from an offensive lineman, interior-wise, from UAB. And his name's Delano Townsend. He is an offensive lineman from Flint, Michigan. He's 6'4", 315 pounds. He had 400 and something pass snaps this year and gave up 1 sack. He actually was recruited to and played at above a level, and he's using that to move up to a Power 5 league, and Ole Miss picked him up. People might remember in 2023, Quincy McGee was on that team from UAB. Ole Miss picked up that. That was a different head coaching, a different system there. But he was able to come in and compete, and by the end of the year, he's pretty good. He actually started at the Peach Bowl. Delano Townsend is a good interior offensive lineman, and with Patrick Kutas and with P.J. Wilkins, Ole Miss is building a little bit of offensive line depth as well. The transfer portal, Ole Miss has also lost Preston Cushman, and they've lost Cam East, I believe, as well. I think it's kind of at this point a net neutral. We have to see what happens if they can fill the roles that some of those interior offensive line starters were happening, like the Patrick Kutas in that. Really interesting stuff. I'm really going to look forward to watching him play and develop, and can him, he has 3 years left in school, develop in a way that you would hope like somebody like Cam East would have. Is this a like-for-like transfer for Cam East, who's transferring likely back to Miami? Preston Cushman's probably going back to South Florida as well. So we'll see exactly how that goes for them. Now, there are some visitors on campus this weekend and the end of this week, and it's a very defense-dominated group if you look at what Zach Berry is reporting right now for the Ole Miss Spirit. One of the linebackers is Taj Chambers. He's a linebacker from Missouri State. He had 88 tackles on last season, 1 fumble recovery, 1 pass defense. He's an athletic guy that's 6'2", 215 pounds. That kind of lets you know what's going on. The size-wise, looking at these offensive linemen or these linebackers that Ole Miss are bringing in, the size is kind of a giveaway if they're thinking inside, if they're thinking outside. Is this a potential, I don't want to say slot corner, but maybe a husky type position, so a different personnel grouping happens? But Taj Chambers, a guy that could fill the role of honestly somebody like Corey Coleman. Another linebacker that they were coming in is Carmaka Glass from Louisiana. The University of Louisiana Raging Cajuns. He is 6'4", 240 pounds. He is a large human being. You look at what he did in his first year at ULL. He had 75 tackles, 44 solos, no passes defense. He did much better in the run game than the pass game, but Louisiana on defense, he had a half a sack as well. Showed out a little bit for the Raging Cajuns. This is an interesting thing because he would have 3 years of play available to him as well. You look back at Taj Chambers, this would be a one and done. So it's a little bit different. Ole Miss is piecing together the defense with one and dones and additional eligibility, but Carmika Glass, he would be an interesting prospect because of the eligibility that he has left and the production that he's already had at the G5 level. The next person that they are bringing in is Sean Murphy, a linebacker out of Florida State. He was recruited to Alabama by Pete Golding. That is that relationship. He only had 13 tackles on the year at Florida State. Florida State was a dumpster fire. He did have 5 tackles against the University of Florida, so almost half of his tackles happened in that one before he was ready to transfer. He's 6'2", 230 pounds from Manassas, Virginia. That's right outside of Washington, D.C. He's listed as a sophomore, so he would have a couple of years of eligibility. I'm curious to see what he looks like because, honestly, I don't know much about him other than the numbers, the size, the analytics of it all. That's what I know about Sean Murphy. But if he's coming in for a visit, obviously Pete Golding thinks pretty highly of him. And an edge visitor from Cameron Olds from Kent State. This is somebody that is interesting. He had 42 tackles on the year, 6 sacks, 1 interception, and he had 1 pass defense. This is a bright spot on a bad Kent State team. He has 1 year of eligibility left. He's a one and done, but it is interesting to say the least of what he could do. And he is listed as an edge, but let me explain to you why they do edges. Why you see that over the old defensive ends that they used to do. In today's football and the use of the spread offense is made it to where the defense has to be much more personnel grouping fluid. Some odd fronts, some even fronts. So you don't have a true strong and weak side defensive end in a 4-3. You don't have a true strong or defensive end group in a 3-4. A defensive end in a 4-3 might be 250 to 260 pounds, ideally, with a strong side end being closer to 280. The defensive ends in a 3-4, 290. An edge player is a player like Will Anderson, a player like Suntaran Perkins, a player like Princely Umanmielen that can be on the outside, even though they are kind of doing some linebacker stuff. They're kind of doing some defensive line stuff. They don't put their hand on the ground, but they're doing whatever is asked of them. That is what an edge is. So when you see an edge, that doesn't mean he's not necessarily a linebacker. It just means he's specialized in the point where he can do some of the stuff that requires you to put the hand on the ground and some of the stuff that requires you to stand up while handling responsibilities of both players in both an odd front and an even front. That's all an edge is. It's a combination of the 3-4 offense outside linebacker and the 4-3 defensive end. That's all an edge is. An edge makes it easier to say whenever they're so position fluid. So we'll see what happens in the commitments. We're waiting to see about quarterbacks and what's going to go on. Ole Miss is up over double digits. I'm expecting probably 10 to 15 more in this winter transfer portal window, and we'll continue to talk about it because it gets absolutely stupid numbers. And so we'll see how it goes. Coming up in our final segment, we'll spotlight the Ole Miss defensive line in the Gator Bowl against the Duke Blue Devils, the stars of 2024. With one-year standouts like Princely and Umanmielen and Walter Nolan and multi-year anchors like Jared Ivey and J.J. Pegues, this dominant unit led the way. Their impact will not be forgotten. Well, it's that time of year. Tonight is that time of year. The college football playoff is back, and with the new expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting action and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the college football playoff begins December 21st, starting with the college football playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern. Leading into our first matchup, the SMU Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Do not miss a moment of the action. Watch all the college football playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. And have you ever heard of the South's favorite pickle? I'm talking about Stewart's Cajun Dill Pickles. If you think you don't like pickles, it's probably because you haven't tried these yet, honestly. These pickles are so fresh and crunchy with just the right amount of Cajun kick to keep you coming back for more. And they're not just delicious, they're also handmade by a family-owned company on the Gulf Coast of Mississippi. Everybody is packed with that authentic Southern flavor. But Stewart's doesn't just stop at pickles. They have pickled green beans, okra, carrots, asparagus, all perfect for spicing up your snack game. You can find these amazing products at Rouse's Market, Sullivan's, Corner Market in Hattiesburg, and even some Winn-Dixies along the Gulf Coast. Or if you prefer shopping online, head to thepickledstore.com. Make sure you give them a like and a follow on Facebook and Instagram as well. And when you shop local and try these pickles, I promise you will not be disappointed. Stewart's Cajun Dill Pickles, the South's favorite pickle. All right, so let's change gears just a little bit and look at what's going on for Ole Miss in the Gator Bowl and the Duke Blue Devils. We've been talking about this in the third segment a large part of this week, and we're going to continue that as well. And we're going to do the defensive line today. And I tried to make slides for everybody, but just so you know, the slide that I made for Princely and Umanmielen, I found out during recording that I put the wrong picture in there. It just made a mistake. So realized that he was a team leader in sacks and all of that, even though he missed a couple of games. Major, big-time play for the single-year player in Princely and Umanmielen. And then you have a Walter Nolan. Walter Nolan in the second half of the season was unblockable for Ole Miss. I honestly feel sorry for Duke if Walter Nolan is motivated. I'm assuming there's going to be some kind of a pitch count in this game, but Walter Nolan had 48 tackles, 14 tackles for loss from his interior defensive line position, even 3 passes defended with 6.5 sacks. It was a consensus All-American type season for Walter Nolan, and that's exactly what he got. Walter Nolan has probably played himself into the first round of the draft, and his dominance on the defensive line was in no small part responsible for beating the Georgia Bulldogs. Walter Nolan played most of the season a little bit nicked up as well, as most people are. You're not 100% after the first ball is snapped. But Walter Nolan was an outrageously fantastic soldier for the Ole Miss Rebels this year, and he deserves anybody that's going to the game, anybody that's watching the game, getting to see number 2 play for Ole Miss on Saturday or at the Gator Bowl is absolutely worth it. Then you have J.J. Pegues. J.J. Pegues on the season had 41 tackles, 13.5 tackles for loss, had a pass defended, 3.5 sacks from his nose tackle position. Also played a little bit of running back. He was arguably the most dominant two-way player in the all of college football. And yes, I realize what I just said there. J.J. Pegues did some special things offensively and defensively, all while wearing the number 38 jersey that celebrates Chucky Mullins. J.J. Pegues absolutely has been a terrific representation of the University of Mississippi over his 3 years in Oxford. He was a signee with Auburn out of high school. He obviously saw the error of his ways and transferred back home to Ole Miss, and he became what he is. J.J. Pegues and Walter Nolan, the interior part of that defensive line, we talked about it for 8 months leading into the football season about needing to attract double teams that you can make that defensive line more effective. That obviously happened as well. You have to pick who you want to double team on this line. 3 players on this defensive line need double teams, maybe 4 if you count Jared Ivey. But you have to kind of pick your poison whether J.J. Pegues or Princely Umanmielen is going to be that second double team. And the beneficiary of that is the next player, Jared Ivey or Suntarine Perkins. Jared Ivey right now had 38 tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 3 passes defended, 7 sacks on the season this year. And I'm going to miss Jared at Ole Miss. I genuinely am. He was probably over the last 3 years one of my most favorite players at Ole Miss. Miss Tracy has been a follower of the podcast pretty much since its inception. I'm going to miss that family unbelievably a great deal. So I hope they get on to the next level. They get to go be great. They get drafted highly enough in the NFL and they turn into the stars that they deserve to be. They're really good players for Ole Miss. Now, looking at Princely Umanmielen, he also had 10.5 sacks. He had 38 tackles or something like that. He had, 13 tackles for loss, 10.5 sacks, 34 tackles on the season. Princely Umanmielen, I do apologize again for messing up the graphic, but a really great player in a position of need for Ole Miss. It allowed Suntarine Perkins to grow into the role that he had by the end of the season. Princely Umanmielen, despite being a really great football player, he was also a great ambassador for Ole Miss. He was a great representative of Ole Miss, and he was a great mentor at Ole Miss for somebody like Suntarine Perkins. And so much so, Princely Umanmielen, his younger brother, Prince Will Umanmielen, is transferring in from Nebraska. Similar size, similar build, similar position played. We'll have to see how it fits. Will Suntarine Perkins get to return the favor to Prince Will Umanmielen? We'll see exactly how that goes as well. All right, so if you want to look at this weekend, I think we've got Tom coming up Sunday. There's not a PM video on Friday. Tonight, there's not going to be one. There's not one on Saturday. We're letting the college football playoff absolutely breathe. We'll have Tom on Sunday. We'll have one Locked On Ole Miss podcast Monday through Friday next week. Next weekend will be weird as well. Once we come back from that weekend, we'll be back to full go. That is the plan right now. But next week is kind of the holiday week with just the regular Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Just this show showing every day. Normally we have the extra videos in the afternoon. All of the guests are at home with their family. So I didn't want to push it. So we're taking a nice holiday break of what's going on. Also, Christmas morning, Ole Miss, Locked On Ole Miss hit the ultimate milestone in the month of December. Christmas morning, we'll tell you all of what that is. Pretty fired up about what is going on with this podcast, and thank you so much for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the number one Ole Miss podcast. Your support means the world to us. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen. For your second listen, check out Locked On SEC Podcast. Host Chris Gordy holds no punches, covering the best conference in college football. Find Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you listen to those podcasts. Howdy toddy, everyone.